Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Why Community Matters webinar series. I'm Judy Gordon, the VP of Marketing for OmniSparks, and I'm here with Joe Hernandez. Hey, Joe, from
Hi,
the
Judy.
Chicago Blockchain Project. Today, we're talking with Amy Vernon. Hi, Amy.
Hey there.
Welcome. Who's going to talk to us about user-generated content and content strategy for community managers.
Yep.
Before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. OmniSparks is a community engagement platform driving crypto project growth. For more information, visit omnisparks.io. And the Chicago Blockchain Project is a trusted resource building Chicago to be the blockchain capital of the world. Join us at Voice of Blockchain at the end of September. We're looking forward to it. So let's get started. Amy, let's start with kind of a little bit about your background. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. I spent 20 years as a newspaper journalist, papers in Miami, Phoenix, and the New York metro area. Before I was laid off in 2008, the third round of layoffs that year, I started getting into Dig and Reddit and StumbleUpon and all of these sort of community voting sites where people were submitting content, a lot of which was actually user-generated content. And that was my entry into social media. And over the next 10 years, I've really worked a lot in community and social and content. Obviously, my background in journalism sort of made that as a no-brainer. But if you think about it, there's always been user-generated content in everything. I mean, newspapers had letters to the editor. Even TV stations in the middle of the night, public access TV stations always had these little shows.
Yeah.
It's just that the tools to do this are a lot easier, and people actually really have a lot of fun, particularly if there's a project or a company or a community that they really love. It's almost like they're doodling in their notebook, except they're doing it on the internet and sharing it with everyone. So that's sort of how I got into this space. My big entry into UGC was really through Dig and Reddit and StumbleUpon, and sort of seeing how also those posts could be used by companies as a form of user-generated content to really spread the word in a more viral manner.
Great. So as a community manager, so after you were a reporter and you got involved in social media, you've been a community manager now for crypto projects and other.
Yes, I've done. It's had various titles. At one point, I was director of audience development and engagement for a news publication. I was on the audience-focused journalism team with McClatchy. In crypto, I was head of community, VP of community for one company. Various titles, but when it comes down to it, at the very base of it, it's all different forms of community management. And even when I was still metro editor at the paper, in a sense, that's what you were doing, because you were talking to the public a lot and sort of sorting through what was going on and trying to figure out how to placate angry people calling the newspaper, because they would do that every day.
So how do you, as community manager and all these different roles that you've had, you talked a little bit about it, how do you kind of think about a content strategy? So you talked a little bit about it as the metro editor, kind of what content to stop people from yelling at but how do you think in general about what kind of content to generate? And then we'll talk about kind of thinking through the user-generated content part.
Sure. There's a few different aspects to it. One is SEO, I think, is always just SEO, sort of like email, is always vastly underrated by the average person, but it's still super important, especially because of this thing. everybody, no one ever types a URL in here. You type in
yeah.
the name of the site,
Yeah.
or you might not remember the name, but you're like, oh, it was this site that did this thing, and you type in 2 or 3 keywords and get it. So SEO is definitely one element of your content strategy that you really need, and you really need to be thinking about it as if I were searching for me, what would I type in? If I were searching for someone like me, not even me, but someone like me or someone like my company, because you have to think a little more generally than specifically, what it is that you do, because you can get way too specific in it and it be no value. I think, part of content strategy is really important to have a home base that you own, and that being a blog. And, you can do that a lot of different ways. You can do it where there's lots of short posts. You can do in-depth think pieces. You can repurpose webinars as a, as content. I used to, at the last company I was at, when our CEO would do a web interview or radio interview with someone, some of those I would hire someone on Fiverr to transcribe it, and then go through the transcription and make sure that it was basically correct, and just polish it up a little bit more, and you have a blog post, right? 2-paragraph introduction, and for not a lot of money and not a lot of time, you have not only the thing that you could originally share that was on someone else's platform, but also something on your own. So it's a way of thinking about all the things you do elsewhere, whether it's on social media or on other people's websites, and figuring out how you can leverage that to bring people back home. And that's really the key point. The key purpose of having a content strategy really is to make people aware, but having a home base for that, where they can come and find all of the stuff that you've done. And also taking those blog posts that you did originally and repurposing them, out on social in different ways, and little like quotes or images or different things like that, and then bringing people again, though, to bring people back. I think having a home base and caught up in all the talk about social media, people kind of forgot the importance of having a home base that they have full control over. I think it's fine to have it as Medium, as long as you're self-hosting your Medium site, because I think Medium is a great CMS, and if you look at it that way. But if you're completely on someone else's platform, you're not getting the full benefit from it. And the full benefit, honestly, a lot of that is through SEO, because all of those posts that you write, and they're about things related to whatever it is that you or your company does, those are the things that people are searching for and trying to find things related to them. So when you don't have somewhere on your own site to bring everyone back to, you're just failing at your content. You could have the best content in the world and a really great content strategy, except it's failed if you're not actually getting people to come back to your site or check you out or download your app or whatever your, the main goal is.
Right. So user-generated content, how does that play with this strategy?
It is great for social content. It can also be really good for posts. Like you have a week where you're having trouble coming up with something, and you can throw together a bunch of things that the community has come up with. And what you'll find is that sometimes you do it through contests. Sometimes you have people in your community who've gotten really excited about your product or your company or your offering or your token, and they just start building things. There were people who would create GIFs with our company logo on it, and some, just images all the time. And it was funny because at first, some of the images, they were nicely done, but they didn't sort of make any sense. Like they just didn't have anything to do with what the company was about. And by sort of encouraging the better things, by sharing and of course giving full credit to the person on social and on your website, wherever it is that you post it, that makes that person really happy because they're being recognized. They did something for you and you're publicly recognizing them back. And it can be subtle, but you can, especially if you send, a private message to the person saying, oh, wow, we really love all your stuff, but this one that you did that actually relates to whatever it is your company or your product is about, was really terrific. And just by sort of subtly encouraging more of the things that make sense and really represent your brand well, can start getting other people, really getting into it.
So is that what strategies have you used to kind of get people started in generating content?
Well, sometimes, very often what you'll find is people just do, really engaged members of the community will do it. Like there's usually some sort of artist or sometimes when you create a GIF, because like we created some GIFs that had the company logo on it, and then other people started doing that. And we added them to sort of, the GIF repository on Telegram of ours, so that people could, when they were searching for something relating to us, that they could find it. Also, I hesitate in calling them bounty campaigns because, or airdrop campaigns, because I think that they've been sort of used and abused, particularly airdrop. I feel like means to so many people, you're just giving them something for nothing. But if you have there was a campaign that we built that was really well thought out by my team, and it was around the release of it was the 2FA app. And so there were like over several weeks, it was basically it was like a contest where it was different things each week. One week was images or an infographic or a short video, and they could receive some tokens for it, but it was like the winners would. And so it was rewarding quality. So it wasn't just, everyone who submitted, anything, even if it was garbage, got something. But it was over enough weeks, and so that people with different skill sets would have different opportunities. And it was really based on the quality and depth of the content, how much it related to the product, how much other people could get out of it. And obviously we weren't looking for stuff that people would spend, $10,000 on or 2 weeks doing. But, some people are really able to, can do really great, like 2-minute videos where they're talking about something and why they're excited. And it's really terrific stuff. And there you suddenly have a video for your YouTube channel that you also can upload natively onto Twitter and onto Facebook, because we know those platforms prefer stuff that is loaded natively onto their platforms as opposed to a YouTube link. And it's something that you have for all these different places, and you have the choice of whether or not you're sharing it on your official channel. But people seeing it are seeing that this is a person. This isn't the company that got on video and said this. This is a community member. This is a consumer. This is a user who felt strongly enough that they took the time to do this. And if you're being the gatekeeper of what's actually being published out on your channels, you can get some really high quality content that way and reward people for it. We were just talking before we went live about the idea that people like to be rewarded. It's not that they're even looking to earn hundreds of dollars, or euro or whatever for something they create, but the recognition and a little reward in the form of your company tokens. If they're that engaged in the product, they're someone who's actually more likely to use the tokens for their actual purpose when the time comes. And so you're using the content to both inform and reach out to other people who maybe didn't know about your project at all, but also to give some resources to someone who's going to use your product. And, particularly in the case of crypto and blockchain, use your tokens. So you're rewarding them with tokens that they're going to use. And the more that your tokens are used, the greater value they're perceived to have, whatever they're doing on the exchanges. I mean, that's sort of neither here nor there, particularly if you're talking about something that eventually is a utility token. It's showing that these tokens actually provide some sort of value to people, whether it's as a utility or as a currency, whatever it is. The more people who are actually using it, the more value it has. And the people who are most likely to use it are the people who are excited enough about your brand and your company and your project to make content about it.
Yeah.
So really build these, I don't know what else to call it, but a bounty program, just because there's no better name for it.
Right.
But really thinking it through.
Incentives.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is. It's providing incentives for people to do some of your marketing work for you. And people want to, because they've invested not just money, but their excitement and their passion into your project. And they want to share that with other people because they get something out of other people recognizing that this project is of value when they were in at the ground floor.
How did you pick the winners?
It was internally, though there was also for each week there was one community favorite as well.
Okay.
So we could make sure that stuff that really had the right message was being selected, but also that the community got a chance to say what they liked best.
So you mentioned the benefits of user-generated content is that it helps people who are already engaged be more engaged and really show. And the second thing you said was that it helps people, it really is an authentic message to someone who isn't as involved in the community. Is there any other benefits that you've seen?
Well, it's also if you're sharing, if you have user-generated content that you're using, those people who create it are also sharing that out. So it's not just that it's an authentic message that other people might see, but the reach of those messages is far greater because they're sharing. And then honestly, their friends and family are like, oh, wow, look at this video or this thing that, my brother did or that my friend did or that my, son did, whatever. The reach of that content is greater than your concentric circles because they're sharing it out into their concentric circles. So that's a real value. And honestly, the cost effectiveness, because of all of those other aspects, is really oftentimes, better than, getting some slick marketing content made by some agency. And not to do that, there's some great work being done by agencies, but it can be a lot more cost effective, especially when you're a startup and you're really working on a budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's great. So you did mention kind of a contest as a great tactic to get user-generated content. Are there any other tactics that you've used?
Well, sometimes it's sort of gently needling folks, saying, well, you're saying that we should, reach out to more vloggers and reach out to, other people. Honestly, it helps a lot when the community is reaching out too, and which, first of all, it does help. And so you have your community who are actively reaching out to other people to do reviews or to take a look. And often content comes out of that. Sometimes they create something in order to get more attention for it. And sometimes you end up it's not necessarily exactly what we're talking about in terms of user-generated content, but there are videos that that come out of that, or infographics that you're included in. That's not strictly user-generated content, except that it sort of came about in the same way through the user channels.
Yeah.
So it's definitely related to that. And really encouraging the folks who do show an interest, who show sort of a facility. Often it starts with just sort of a little joke GIF where they put your logo on it. But when you show them appreciation for that, we had one community member who was he was a very talented graphic artist. And at first, some of his images that he created, we were like, that's really nice. And we would scratch our heads to ourselves saying, it is really nice. I just don't know what it has to do with anything. But sort of through that kind of encouragement that I was talking about before, he, just as time went on, he would occasionally toss an image in, and he's like, oh, feel free to use this anywhere. And they were, he was a very talented artist. And we were getting, images later on that, we really did use on our social channels and shared out. And, he was doing it purely because he had been in since the ICO and was very excited about it and wanted other people to understand what was different about it. And that was his talent, was doing that. So it's sort of finding those community members who are doing little things already and encouraging them. And we hadn't done this at the point that I left the company, but, we were talking about at some point, giving him a small reward just as a thank you, as, you've created all this content for us over time. We really appreciate that. But he was doing it not for any, recompense. He appreciated that we appreciated it and really showing that. And honestly, once one person's doing that and it's recognized, other people, very often start doing that as well.
That's great. And do they ever have an issue with you using it in other places or?
No, we would always ask anyway.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we share this out on all our social channels and just tell us what your, how you want us to refer to you on Facebook and Twitter and wherever else, and Telegram. Just how do you want us to refer to you? We want to make sure that you get credit, and people would love that. And sometimes even with that graphic artist, we would say obviously you can see from this if you're looking for someone to do some graphics for you or some graphic art for you, you feel free to get in touch and we'll connect you with him. That never happened with those particular ones, but our community wasn't, they were more users as opposed to people who were building projects. But in the right project, that's something that, could potentially be fruitful for them, where, you can't hire them or maybe can't give them, pay them for what they do, but you can say, look, this is work they did. Obviously they're good at it, happy to put you in touch. And so it's just making sure that you're crediting people properly. They never had any issues with us sharing at other places. They really appreciated it. And they appreciated that we were asking and that we were crediting, and that we were asking how they wanted to be credited. So we were assured to give them the right type of tag on the right platform.
So it sounds like it's really critical to start, as you're building your community, to really identify those people who have the talents that you can really encourage and foster to help.
Yeah. And it's just, it comes from paying attention. I mean, every community has them. You'll see people suddenly post these great, funny images or GIFs that have the company logo in them, and you're just like, this is really fun, can we use this?
So are there any pitfalls for community managers out there? Are there any pitfalls that people should be aware of or think about?
Like anything that involves the user and sort of opening things up to the community, is there's bound to be someone somewhere along the line who decides, I've created all this stuff for you and I deserve to be paid, even though, all along you've been thanking them and you never asked them to create these things in the first place. or they feel that they weren't properly recognized, or, if you did have some sort of contest, they felt that theirs was far superior to something that won. And honestly, you deal with it in pretty much the same way that you deal with anyone who gets pissed off in your community. If they're angry and they're saying, we don't want you to use that anymore because, we should have, gotten something for it, you just delete it from everywhere that you have it, and apologize, but make sure you're doing it publicly. Like if they're doing this publicly, make sure you're responding that way publicly, and just apologize, even though you don't have anything to apologize for. It's that person, they're feeling. It doesn't hurt you. I'm sorry. We thought that you wanted us to share it. No problem. We'll take it down. And that's really the worst that it gets. I mean, some of it, you'll get stuff that in those contests where it's people who are very negative and are actually trying to criticize your project. Yeah. That stuff's not going to get as widespread because, first of all, you're not going to be choosing it as the winner and sharing it on your channel. Right. And most of your community isn't going to either. Right. And honestly, the people who do that are people who are probably loudly complaining in other ways. So you kind of already know where that's going to come from for the most part. Everybody knows the cranks who every 6 weeks or so, they suddenly pop up and start complaining about everything that you've answered a zillion times before, and it doesn't matter. It just is, and you deal with it as respectfully as you can and shut it down as easily as you can. And just if they are someone who's shared good things before, you just apologize and say, sorry, we'll just take it down, and you do that and it's gone. Yeah. So we have a question actually from someone watching the webinar who's talking about, I'm not familiar with platforms maybe you are, library credits and Advantage. He says they give coins to view videos or documents on their platform. And could other coins or community use these platforms to create traction in your own community? So could you use kind of other platforms like I am unfamiliar with those two specific platforms, but I actually the PR company that my old company used to work with, they did work with a couple of platforms where you could be rewarded for different types of actions in their tokens or in your own. There was one platform where it was your tokens and another platform where it was theirs. I'm blanking on their names off the top of my head. And, that can range from anything from app installations to, creating content. So definitely, if you find a platform that helps reward people for doing certain types of actions, it's just a matter of figuring out, what it is that you're looking for. And you don't want to reward. I think the major pitfall there is just that how much control you have over who's rewarded, because obviously you don't want to reward someone who's creating negative content about you or inaccurate content about you. So that's why I hesitate a little, just because I'm not specifically familiar with those two platforms. But if you sort of talk it through and figure out exactly what is rewarded, or do you have control over who is rewarded, there are lots of platforms like that are set up to help you do things like that. They tend to cost something too, which is, as we were talking about UGC and the budgetary benefits of it. Yeah. That I didn't bring that up, but sometimes the money that you would spend on those platforms is still far less than doing some big marketing campaign. Yeah. All right, so we're coming to the end of the half hour. Is there anything else, Amy, that you want people to know about UGC, or any other tips or advice for community managers? I think one thing that can be really helpful too when you're soliciting it is offering resources to them. So
yeah.
offering, like, so if you have like a contest and it involves video, offering some sort of B-roll that incorporates your logo or tagline or something, making sure that you have high-res logo images for people, direct them to maybe 2 or 3 pieces of content that you've written or you have on your website that really give a deep dive, or maybe an interview with your CEO or CTO or someone that gives really in-depth answers, so that they have a little bit more depth to create it from. So, you want to offer those resources too, but if someone says, oh, I really want to do a video showing the benefits of your platform or your product or your project, as opposed to, your competitors, like, who would you really consider your competitors? Offer those, give those answers to people, because if they're going to be creating something, you want it to be as accurate as possible. So, help them help you.
Okay, that's great. What about tools, like video creation tools, or do people just use what they want to use?
I think it's honestly best for people to use what they want to use, because if they're, like with image creation, there are people who are like a whiz on Canva and can build beautiful social images on Canva, and couldn't find their way, into even signing on to Adobe Photoshop.
That'd be me.
It's
Canva.
but you know what? There are people who are Photoshop whizzes, and Canva, for all its simplicity, because they're so used to Photoshop, it's going to take them half the time to create something on there than it would on Canva. So letting people choose the platform that they're creating it on, whether it's video or image or whatever, I really think is best, because you're going to get the best quality out of it, and you're also going to get more content out of it, because it's not just the people who know Photoshop, or just the people who know Canva, or just the people who know any of these myriad I can't even name all of them. I get emails every day about new, like, video creation. I heard of one called Fleek today, and I was just like, what is that? But it's some video platform where you can create these like 2 or 3 minute videos in 5 minutes. And I'm like, I don't see how that works, but sure. But it's, I mean, there are so many that you don't want to limit. You don't want to limit what you get. I think the only thing you really need to do is say, the files need to be, if it's video, the files need to be an MOV file, or it needs to be a JPEG or a PNG. Just what the end result has to be. Say that, and say maybe the file size. But not, so just that way, so you're not dealing with like some files that are like, ginormous, and others that are, the size of a favicon. But beyond that, really let people use the tools that they are most comfortable with.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This was really great. Really good overview, I think, for a lot of community managers out there.
Great.
Join us, everyone, in 2 weeks, June 5th. We'll have Lou Kerner, who's a crypto oracle, talking about the pending battle between crypto and Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. So it should be a great discussion.
Yeah, that should be really interesting.
All right, great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.